To gain an edge in the battlefield, China's waging war on brains. And I don't mean harvesting them like they do with other organs. Welcome to China Uncensored, I'm Chris Chappell. The Chinese Communist Party has a new front in its war against the US, and I kid you not, it's brain control weaponry. Think I'm joking? Explain TikTok. Now, in some ways, this isn't entirely new. Communist regimes have always relied on propaganda to control how people think. The 21st century saw targeted disinformation spread through control of the media and social media. Fake news. Taiwan has been a victim, and Hong Kong. But China isn't just resorting to disinformation and propaganda. They're actually working on technology to directly target people's brains at the biological level. In other words, China is working on mind control. It's called cognitive warfare, and let me emphasize, this isn't a conspiracy theory. Cognitive warfare and weaponized neuroscience has been on military leaders' minds for quite some time. See what I did there? Back in 2020, NATO's Innovation Hub published a report on cognitive warfare. It said the human mind is now being considered as a new domain of war, with even neuroweapons for targeting the brain. These neuroweapons could affect how people think, feel, and act. Wait, are they talking about smartphones? My foot didn't fall asleep because I scrolled too long on the toilet. It was a neurological attack. NATO specifically singled out China and how it sees the brain as the HQ of the human body, and precisely attacking the HQ is one of the most effective strategies for determining victory or defeat on the battlefield. China knows very well there's no guarantee that it can defeat its enemies through traditional kinetic warfare. That's why it's seeking ways to influence and manipulate enemies, not just destroy them. Back in 2018, Chinese researchers at the People's Liberation Army-linked National University of Defense Technology highlighted 6 technologies that they believe will be key to winning cognitive warfare. One of them is cognitive interference technology. These include light waves, electromagnetic waves, and microwaves that can cause psychological damage, confusion, and even hallucinations, changing the other's cognition and ultimately causing the enemy to act in violation of their own interests. Seriously, they're talking about TikTok. That same year, scientists funded by the Chinese National Natural Science Foundation urged China to invest in military brain science to research things like brain protection equipment and brain-linked technology. I'm assuming they mean more than just a helmet. And it seems China's People's Liberation Army has been taking their advice. I'll tell you more after the break. Welcome back. There is a war for your mind. The PLA recognizes there's more to war than destroying enemies. The PLA news outlet PLA Daily says the fundamental purpose of war is to force the enemy to submit, which is why human brain cognition has truly risen to an important field of military confrontation. The PLA has been quietly watching how other nations engage in warfare, what works and what doesn't work, and learning. PLA Daily says the purpose of implementing a cognitive attack is to use an invisible hand to control the opponent's will, making the opponent feel, I can't and I dare not, and then achieve the effect of, I don't want to. And anyone who's ever interacted with a toddler knows the power of, I don't want to. Which, according to the PLA Daily, goes to show that war is not only a material contest, but also a spiritual contest. So what is the PLA doing to put brain warfare into practice? Well, it's merging 4 major technology fields for military purposes: nanotech, biotech, information, and cognition. Brain control tools made from this tech would help with taking over the enemy's way of thinking and his awareness, and even directly intervene in the thinking of the enemy's leaders and staff. I don't think you need to mess with certain leaders' brains to disrupt their awareness and thinking. These brain control tools would also direct control of machines using thoughts through mature brain-machine interface. I really hate living in a dystopian sci-fi future. According to an adjunct fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, it's the stuff of science fiction, such as brain-controlled weaponry, that would allow a Chinese commando to discharge a weapon with just a thought, not a trigger finger. And to make sure no other country could use this technology against them, China is also developing tech for protecting brains. One PLA Daily article reported that they already have an intelligent psychological monitoring system that can continuously record facial information to judge the psychological state of officers and soldiers in real time. That is so messed up. The U.S. knows this is a threat. This 2021 report from the U.S. Department of Defense is literally talking about China using mind control. That same year, the U.S. accused Chinese tech firms and research institutes of weaponizing biotechnology to create brain control weaponry, which is easily the second worst thing Chinese researchers have been accused of unleashing on the world. The U.S. sanctioned the Academy of Military Medical Sciences, the research arm of the PLA, along with 11 of its research institutes, in part because of purported brain control weaponry. But how far along is this technology? This is all still theoretical, right? Well, it turns out China's a lot further along than you may think. I'll tell you more after this final commercial break. Welcome back. Move over Musk, because China is making strides in brain-linked technologies. But it's especially getting good at neurostrikes, non-kinetic technology that impairs cognition, reduces situational awareness, and inflicts long-term neurological damage. And I'm not talking about social media. According to this recent study, China is a world leader in the development of neurostrike weapons. And they're serious about it. Neurostrike is part of the CCP's standard order of battle, not an unconventional set of capabilities only to be used under extreme circumstances, with an end goal that is so CCP. According to the study, any breakthrough in this research would provide unprecedented tools for the CCP to forcibly establish a new world order, which has been Xi Jinping's lifelong goal. Trying to take over the world? Who do they think they are? Pinko, commie, and the brain? There's lots of uses for this technology for the CCP. For example, China could use neurostrikes in the South China Sea against Filipino or American ships patrolling international waters. In a worst-case scenario, like an invasion of Taiwan, China could use neurostrikes to instill intense fear, confusion, or even targeted release of a bacterial strain. This is seriously a scenario that the report made. So what should the U.S. do about all this? The report points out that China does not yet possess the defense and industrial base to produce the types of technologies required to operate a neurostrike program that has technical capabilities that match the strategic ambitions of the CCP and PLA, although that doesn't necessarily mean they aren't trying. Havana syndrome, a set of strange symptoms including pain, ringing ears, and cognitive dysfunction, started showing up in U.S. government officials and diplomats abroad as early as 2016, and no one really knows what causes it. You know, Back to the Future 2 promised us a very different future. I'm very disappointed. China Uncensored would not exist without the support from viewers like you. Frequent demonetization and age restriction by YouTube would have run us out of business. Most of our budget comes from fan support on the crowdfunding website Patreon. That's patreon.com/China Uncensored. If you support the show with even as little as $1 an episode, you'll get a bunch of cool perks, including the chance to have me answer your question on the show. And today's question comes from Tony Chapkowski. Yellen was on fentanyl, another Chi-Com success. Okay, Tony is responding to Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen's trip to China, where she repeatedly bowed to her Chinese counterpart. Look, even though China is pumping fentanyl into the U.S. as part of a drug warfare campaign, saying Yellen did that because she was on fentanyl is going too far. It was psychedelic mushrooms, not fentanyl. So, it was quite the trip. Thanks for your support, Tony, and thank you for watching. Remember, check out our crowdfunding campaign on patreon.com/China Uncensored. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.